This content is produced by PASS, the CSLB, an independent audio-first study companion for busy California B general candidates. I build these lessons from official CSLB study guide topics and reputable source-backed California materials so you can study on the go. This is exam prep reinforcement, not legal, professional, engineering, or job-specific advice. Exam content is set by PSI and the CSLB and may change, so always verify current requirements against official CSLB materials. No exam outcome is guaranteed. Now let's get into it. A roof covering is not the same thing as a roof assembly. That distinction is the heart of this lesson. A metal panel may not burn, but the panel is only the top layer. The deck, underlayment, insulation, when part of the tested system, fastening method, and covering have to work together under the applicable classification. For many systems over a combustible deck, the Class A claim belongs to that tested and listed combination, not to the shiny surface by itself. Suppose a contractor is replacing a roof in a designated fire hazard area. The owner chooses standing seam metal, and somebody says, "Metal does not burn, so the roof must be Class A." That conclusion skips the assembly. If the listed system requires a particular fire-resistant layer, and the crew substitutes ordinary felt, the completed work may no longer match the system that earned the classification. The practical consequence can be rejection, removal, and rework, even though the visible panels look excellent. I want you to remember one sentence from the beginning. A roof rating follows the verified assembly. Material intuition is not a substitute for the listing, approved plans, current code, or the authority having jurisdiction. Class A describes the highest of the 3 external fire exposure classifications discussed in this source material. Class B and Class C represent lower levels of resistance. The California baseline cited in the research requires Class A roof assemblies in designated fire hazard severity zones. Exact applicability still depends on the project location, building type, adopted code, and local amendments, so I would confirm those conditions before estimating or ordering material. The 2 test methods named in the source are ASTM E108 and UL 790. They evaluate external fire behavior through test exposures that include flame spread, intermittent flame, and a burning brand. I do not treat those test names as labels for one product on a supplier shelf. I treat them as evidence tied to a defined construction. That changes field supervision. If the approved assembly identifies a deck, a barrier or underlayment, a covering, and specific installation conditions, each part matters. A substitution can be sensible as a product choice and still fail the listing question. Better, newer, thicker, or more expensive does not automatically mean equivalent. The useful question is narrower. Does the exact installed combination remain within the tested listing and the project approval? I put a decision matrix on screen because this check should happen layer by layer. First, confirm whether the project requires Class A. Next, identify the actual deck. Then compare the underlayment or fire barrier, roof covering, and installation details against the listed assembly and approved plans. Finally, retain the documents that support the classification. If any layer changes, stop long enough to verify the change before that layer disappears under finished work. The code also recognizes certain constructions as Class A under the stated conditions. The source identifies exposed concrete roof decks, brick, masonry, and copper sheets weighing at least 16 ounces per square foot. Those examples are useful, but they do not justify guessing about a different material. A contractor still has to match the project condition to the actual code language. There is another classification that sounds stronger but answers a different question. Class 4 is an impact resistance rating associated with hail performance. Class A, Class B, and Class C describe external fire performance. A higher-looking number from an impact test does not replace a fire classification. I keep the words attached to the hazard, letters for the fire class, and Class 4 for impact. The Wildland-Urban Interface adds another layer of coordination. A Class A roof surface can resist external fire exposure, while an ember still finds an opening into the attic. Roof hardening, therefore, cannot stop at the field of the roof. vents, eaves, and transitions are part of the building's exposure. For the ventilation openings covered by the source report, the California baseline calls for noncombustible, corrosion-resistant mesh. The openings must be no smaller than 1/16 of an inch and no larger than 1/8 of an inch. Those two limits form a range, not two alternative recommendations. 1/4 inch hardware cloth falls outside that range. The practical effect of the mesh is physical. It reduces the size of the open path through which wind-driven material can enter, while the vent still provides an intended ventilation opening. A contractor should verify the approved vent product in detail, because mesh size alone may not answer every project-specific requirement under the current adopted code. Unenclosed eaves require the same disciplined attention. The source states that the exposed roof deck on the underside may be constructed of non-combustible material, ignition-resistant material, or fire-retardant treated wood. Another listed path is protection by at least one layer of 5/8 of an inch Type X gypsum sheathing behind the exterior covering. Open eaves are not automatically prohibited. Their exposed underside must meet an allowed protection path. I put the statewide baseline into one reference table. The roof assembly row asks for Class A, where the designated fire hazard requirement applies. The vent row gives the 1/16 through 1/8 inch mesh range. The eave row lists the allowed material categories and the Type X gypsum protection described in the source. The final row is the boundary that prevents overconfidence. Confirm current local requirements with the authority having jurisdiction. That last row matters because wildfire rules are location sensitive. A state baseline does not erase a stricter local amendment. The source specifically warns against making a universal claim about wood shakes, because a local jurisdiction may prohibit them, even when a state-level provision appears to allow a listed, treated product under stated conditions. I would not approve that choice from memory. I would verify the current local rule and the exact listing. A clean verification sequence keeps this manageable. I start with location and authority. Is the parcel in a designation that triggers the requirement and which adopted code and local amendments govern? Next, I identify the roof deck and every layer proposed above it. Then I obtain the tested listing, manufacturer installation requirements, and approved plan details that support the claimed classification. After that document check, I compare the field installation with the approved combination. I look for substitutions, omitted barriers, changed deck conditions, incompatible fasteners or application details, and any product that cannot be traced to the approved assembly. I also verify that vents and exposed eave conditions match the approved Wildland-Urban Interface details. Timing is part of quality control. The easiest moment to correct an underlayment is before panels or shingles cover it. The easiest moment to confirm protection behind an eave covering is before the finish closes the cavity. Photographs, product data, listing information, approved substitutions, and inspection records create a useful trail when a hidden condition later needs to be confirmed. Imagine a hypothetical remodel where the estimator prices a familiar underlayment, but the selected metal roof listing names a different barrier over the existing combustible deck. The purchasing team sees two products that appear to serve the same general purpose. The right supervision decision is not to pick the cheaper roll and hope. It is to resolve the listing and approval before purchase. That short pause protects the schedule because it happens before installation, not after inspection. This is also why a covering warranty and a fire classification should not be blended together. A warranty answers the manufacturer's stated commercial terms. The classification answers how the defined assembly performed under the applicable test and code path. Both may matter, but one does not prove the other. Roof assembly compliance protects the building. Roofing fall protection protects the people installing it. The research report includes California-specific triggers, and the first decision is to classify the work correctly. A generic rule remembered from another jurisdiction is not enough. For the general roofing operations described in California, OSHA Section 1730, work on slopes below 4 and 12 requires fall protection when the height exceeds 20 feet. For new production type residential roofing under Section 1731, a roof from 3 and 12 through 7 and 12 requires fall protection when the eave height exceeds 15 feet. When that production residential roof is steeper than 7 and 12, protection is required regardless of height. I put those categories side by side because 20 feet, 15 feet, and regardless of a height belong to different work conditions. The general roofing row is not interchangeable with the production residential row. The roof slope, eave height, project type, and roofing operation determine which trigger applies. If the work classification is uncertain, I would resolve it through the current California rule and qualify safety supervision before work begins. The trigger tells you when protection is required. It does not tell you that every protection method fits every operation. The source lists several possible protections for general roofing, including qualifying parapets, personal fall protection, catch platforms, scaffold platforms, eave barriers, and standard guardrail-related measures. Selection and setup still have to comply with the applicable rule and the actual site condition. When a personal fall arrest system is used, the source gives two numbers that describe system performance. The anchorage must support 5,000 pounds per employee, and the maximum free fall distance is 6 feet. The system also has to be adjusted so the employee does not reach the ground. Do not confuse that 6-foot free fall limit with the height trigger that determined whether roofing fall protection was required. They answer different questions. Consider a new production type residential roof with an eave height of 16 feet and a slope of 5 and 12. That condition is above the 15-foot eave trigger described for the moderate slope category. If the slope changes to 8 and 12, the steep slope rule applies regardless of the eave height. The small change in pitch changes the applicable category, which is why the supervisor needs the actual roof geometry and work type, not a remembered slogan. Several common confusions become easy to separate once each rule is attached to the question it answers. Class A answers an external fire classification question. Class 4 answers an impact resistance question. The vent mesh range answers an ember opening requirement and the covered Wildland-Urban Interface provisions. The fall protection triggers answer when worker protection is required for the specified roofing operations. Defensible space and structural hardening also belong in separate mental boxes. Vegetation management around a building is not the same task as selecting the roof assembly, protecting ventilation openings, or treating the exposed underside of an eave. They can support the same larger wildfire strategy without being interchangeable scopes of work. The most expensive mistake in this topic often begins with a true statement used to support a false conclusion. Metal is noncombustible, therefore any metal roof is Class A. The first half may describe the covering. The second half makes an unsupported leap about the assembly. Type X gypsum can be part of an allowed protection path. Therefore, any piece of gypsum anywhere at an eave complies. Again, the conclusion ignores thickness, placement, approved detail, and surrounding construction. I use a simple field question to stop those leaps. What exactly is being classified or approved? If the answer is the assembly, I verify the assembly. If the answer is a vent opening, I verify the vent product and opening range. If the answer is an unenclosed eave underside, I verify the allowed material or protection detail. If the answer is worker safety, I identify the operation, slope, height, and selected protective system. That habit also improves estimating. A quote based only on the visible roof covering can miss the required barrier, special vent products, eave protection, access, fall protection, documentation, and inspection sequence. The source does not provide project prices, so I would not invent an allowance. I would identify each verified requirement and price the actual approved scope. Here's the compact memory connection I would carry on to a job. Think in 3 gates. Gate 1 is the roof assembly. Confirm the fire classification for the complete approved system. Gate 2 is the Wildland-Urban Interface opening. Confirm the vents and exposed eave protection. Gate 3 is the roofing operation. Confirm the California fall protection category before anybody starts elevated work. The central gate is still the first one. A Class A looking material is not the same as a verified Class A roof. Follow the classification through the deck. Required layers, covering, installation, listing, plans, and project approval. Then check the openings around it and the people working above it. That is a supervision method you can apply without pretending that one memorized product or one generic safety number fits every California project. There is an audio practice quiz for this specific episode. It is audio-based, so I read the questions aloud and you answer by tapping. I built it for people studying while driving, working, or otherwise on the go. Go to the description below this video. You will see a link that says Pass the CSLB. Tap it. It will take you straight there. Comment below with any questions about the material I covered. I read those questions and I want to help you make the distinctions clearly. Subscribe so you can stay on track through every episode until you get your license.